Hello, this is Ben, that guy with the French accent, and today we're gonna talk about tabletop role-playing game and more specifically the OSR. Today I was on social media and I saw a topic of conversation, or rather a video, I think, that was about the ultimate demise of the OSR. The OSR is dead, and so on. And this is the kind of topic that comes back regularly, like the OSR has been dying since its inception, and every now and again you get some guys who are like coming out and saying, "Oh, that's it, that's the end of it, this is over," and that's fundamentally misunderstanding what the OSR actually is. So I made fun of it on social media a little bit. And to my surprise, some people came out, like some gamers I know, asking me, "But Ben, I'm a gamer, and I have no idea what this OSR is. What is it?" And then I realized that guys like me who have been around like for maybe 20 years online, I've gone through a lot of stuff, and there are some people who have been introduced to role-playing games very recently, whether by 4th edition, 5th edition now, who might not know any of this background information, or the little niche that you will find in the hobby. So we're going to try to define what is the OSR, and what it is, it isn't, to the people who are in it, even the people who might say they're not in it but are actually in it. And we're going to find out at the end whether we can kill it and get some XP from it. To understand the OSR, you need to go back to the era of the early 2000s, right? And first, we're going to try to define what is the OSR, right? But we're not going to need to get into the story. So, first, the OSR means old school Renaissance, originally. But since then, what the actual acronym means has been debated, particularly the R part. So the old school, that refers to games, role-playing games, tabletop, who were played mostly like pre-Wizards of the Coast acquiring Dungeons & Dragons, pre-3rd edition D&D. So we're talking about the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. You will find people who buy OSR product, or who play OSR games, or the original versions of the games, of different styles and different eras in these 30 years, right? Some people are more into the very early games of the 70s. Some people are more into the advanced version of the Dungeons & Dragons game. Some other people will play the full gamut of 2nd edition, with all the options and the extra spells and all that stuff. All right, so the Renaissance part that came out that way, but since then it's been people have been basically labeling it with the art they want. For some people, it's a revival. Some people that's really about the rules. It's about a rebirth. It's about a return of the old school style. So that can mean a great number of things, and you will have a definition of the OSR per gamer you meet who knows of its existence, basically. And there's no nailed down definition of the OSR. And to understand this, we need to go back to the whole history of the thing, right? So it first started with the first generation of clones. Back then, the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons was king. And the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons was notably complicated. It had feats, it had skills, it had a number of bells and whistles, which after a few years, you had a fair number of gamers who were like kind of missing the simplicity of the TSR core gameplay. And among these people, you had a number of aficionados who were like, you know what would be cool? It would be cool if we could make documents based on the open game license, which allows third-party publishers to create material for Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition. Up to that point, it would be cool if we could make some system reference documents that are using the 3rd edition terms and what is legal to use to define how we could publish games and supplements that are based on the TSR versions of the game legally under the open game license. And the first of these ones, these system reference documents, that's the OSRIC that you can see on the left here, right? So OSRIC, that means literally Old School Reference Index Compilation. And that was the very first of its kind. It was not a game. It was a document meant to help people publish under the open game license new products of 1st edition AD&D, right? Entirely legally. Soon after, it was followed by Labyrinth Lord, and Labyrinth Lord that replicates the basic expert boxed set of 1981 specifically of Dungeons and Dragons, and the Sword is Wizardry white box and the core rules back then. That is, the Sword and Wizardry game is basically the original Dungeons and Dragons of 1974, but the different versions of Sword and Wizardry replicate different slices in the timeline of the original game until it evolved into 1st edition AD&D. So you got the white box Sword and Wizardry, that is pretty much the original box of 1974 alone, and then you have something like the Sword and Wizardry complete rule book that you see on the screen here. That is pretty much proto 1st edition. That is the white box plus all the supplements, bits of the supplements that create a coherent game that plays like the original game just before it became 1st edition AD&D. So that's how it started, right? And so these games these documents became circulated, and soon the editors of these documents learned that people were playing them, or actually attempting to play with the documents, and they were complaining that it didn't feel like a complete game. And that was a complete surprise at the time. Because that wasn't the aim of these things. And to help gamers, the documents were left out with original text to make them playable and readable as entire games. And that's how the clones of this 4th generation were born, right? And soon they were followed by the second wave of clones, right? And this second wave of clones took those rules of TSR D&D, the different version, and they created their own universes, their own variants. The house rules that some guy played for years, or that he just imagined, and so it would be a cool game of its own. And that's how you get those games like White Star, which is like all the original rules, but for science fiction. You got Hyperborea, which is like the original 1st edition's AD&D rules, but retooled to work with a new kind of setting that is more based on Robert E. Howard, H.P. Lovecraft, really a low type of fantasy with horror and weird fantasy to it. You got Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is still a bit further, a bit more of its own game, roughly based off the basic expert era, but then adding a ton of options, polyhedral dice that did not exist at the time, and spells of tables of spell failures, and all sorts of things like that. All right, and so those became their own games, really, the second generation of clones. The 3rd generation of clones, that's when suddenly other people wondered, hey, if we can do that for TSR D&D, can we also use the open game license to recreate other game systems that have that were branched out of D&D and became their own games very early on, and essentially recreate other role-playing games under the open game license with the same legal protection. And some publishers or inheritors of the IP of these games, like D6, which was the foundation of the West End Games, Star Wars role-playing games, most notably. So this is how this version came about, that the holder of the IP basically decided to make it open in that way. Others were just fans and gamers who loved these games, who created something like Open Quest, which is basically the basic role-playing system of Chaosium, but just retooled and reworked to have to work legally under the open game license. Or you have something like this Punk, that is a version of rule system that has more to do in terms of feel with cyberpunk games and other games of the near future like this. It includes Netrunners and stuff like that, and it's got the same kind of flavor. Obviously not the exact same rules, but the same flavors and close enough to replicate the feel of the games we liked from this time period, like Cyberpunk 2020 and those kind of games. So that's the third type of. And meantime, I mean another type of from this third generation of clones. Sorry, you had then their own games that developed from the clones of these other role-playing games, right? So you got, for instance, Raiders of Relie, which is essentially derived from Open Quest, from the D100 D100 Open, and the basic system essentially, and that's kind of Call of Cthulhu. It involves the H.P. Lovecraft mythos and so on, but it's put in the 1900s and 1910 instead. So that's during the Gilded Age and the pre-World War I era. So you got a much more Indiana Jones feel to it, and you can play some characters that are more or less heroic depending on the type of game you want to play. It's got lots of options for conspiracies and long treks across the globe, and it's a really good game as well. All right, so meanwhile, something like the first generation clones, the previous generation of clones, that didn't stop. There are still some first generation clones, for instance, that come out today. So we've got something like the old school essentials, the OSE, which is itself like a kind of a replacement or a restatement of Labyrinth Lord. This is the BX, the Basic Expert set of 1981, that is repackaged into a number of books which I'm told have excellent layout, great to manipulate and use in play, and they have really their crowd that are now following those guys, and they seem to be doing a terrific job with this. So this is the kind of games that are in the OSR, right? You got a lot of people that wonder what is the play style of the OSR, and you got a lot of debates online that try to split hairs and this is this but not this. The problem is that you're gonna get a manifesto for every game that exists under the OSR. You get if not every gamer, right? And so I think that a better way to define the OSR is from its inception. It comes really from the open game license. Without the open game license, you wouldn't have the OSR as it exists. You wouldn't have replications of, or near replications of games that we played when we were kids. Okay, and that are now introduced to a new generation of kids, because now we are parents, we are relatives of parents, We have colleagues that have children. We have neighbors that have children, and now we're introducing those games into the stream. This is not OSR games are not games that you will see on the usual local shop or in conventions, in tournaments and stuff like that are officially sanctioned by this or that company. You will see that more in communities, in schools. This is something that is very, very much organic and that still spreads like it used to be. That is introducing people that are not especially gamers to the games directly in real life. And online as well, because now the virtual tabletop, or at least playing by Skype and stuff like that, has become such a big thing that the games propagate organically and gain new players this way now. So I think it's much more accurate to define the OSR app from the OGL. Any game that is published with a base from the Open Game License and that tries to replicate legally through the OGL at least part of a previous game from the past to create its own thing can be said to be an OSR game, right? So even some people who say, oh, but I have nothing to do with TSR D&D, I don't use dungeons in my games, I don't even know what you're talking about with this OSR, they might actually have created their own OSR game, right? Which might be based on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or God knows what game, and in effect have something that they publish for that is OSR, but that they themselves do not consider OSR because they would have another definition based on TSR D&D or whatever, right? So I think that's really the best way to define the thing. So that's where we come to the death knell of the OSR. Can we kill it? Is it dying? Well, no, not really. And you can't kill it. Because fundamentally, the OSR, if you bring it back to the people, this is about people who enjoyed old games and new games that are fashioned after the old games and just keep playing these games and just love the gaming. You can't kill this. You might have ebbs and flows in popularity. The OSR may become more or less underground or mainstream as time goes on. But ultimately, you will always have people who are still fans of the early versions of D&D, if only that, and will want to publish their own module or their own campaign that they've played for 15 years, or God knows what, right? So it's nearly just like trying to kill a Hydra that has an infinite number of heads. If you've played AD&D, right? So you can slice the heads of the Hydra, but they grow back, and they each have their own hit points, right? Well, that's basically what it is. You can't just do this like that. So these kind of debates, you got all sorts of debates about, but what does the R mean? And, there's a manifesto of what an old school game is supposed to be, and so on and so forth. Well, you just can't do that because each game and rule system will have its own idiosyncrasies, the way it's played, the way it's supposed to be manipulated, the rules that are supposed to be used, not used. You can always say, well, it's more role-playing than rolling with dice. It's more instinctive. There may be some commonalities, but that has more to do with the era of role-playing games we're talking about than anything else. In the past, the Dungeon Master was really, and is still in the OSR games, the interface of the players with the make-believe. So in that sense, you need to have a game master that is in charge of the game and can say override the rules and say, we are using that rule, but not that rule. Because in my campaign, that doesn't work that way. And, that's just the way it's supposed to work. Since then, Now you have games that really codify those kind of things extremely precisely, operate or on completely different paradigms in terms of creating a narrative and all sorts of things that just did not come to mind of gamers back then. At least not in those terms, right? So it's trying to bring it back to a play style is really reducing the potential of the OSR, in my opinion. It's really more about the games themselves, that they're based on the open game license, and that it's about people enjoying the games today and being able to publish today new material for the games they love and their extensions thereof, their own creations. And that's it. That's what the OSR is. So I'm sorry to say, but it's not about to die anytime soon. And that's it for today. And we'll talk together again with the next video. Bye bye.